Do you find yourself working really hard to create this positive work culture, positive work environment for your team? And there's always this one person or two people that seem to be always sabotaging because they're always looking to create some negativity, always trying to get your team to move in an opposite direction because they may say this is not good for us. I've worked on projects with similar situation where we all agree on something that we think that this is going to be good for everyone, only to know that even someone that's on that project plan may be behind working with another group to go in another direction. And I get to talk to quite a few lab leaders, and there's this futility when it comes to creating this positive environment where people work so hard, but there's always that one or so person that's usually very good at what they do. They may be a good tech, but then they enjoy creating that negative environment. So after having this situation for me on projects, I've actually confronted that person, and not necessarily in a very bad way, but I had to deal with it with that person. And I know that for some leaders, it gets so frustrating that you're like, I don't have time. I'm just going to ignore that person. I'm going to try to move on. But then you try to move on and you can't move forward, because even though sometimes you may ignore that person, they have such a major influence on your team that there's always issues where people are so disgruntled, going to HR, and you're always dealing with this like a whole revolving door. So I'm going to share with you what I did and how it worked for me. So the first thing to do is to communicate to discover. So you're communicating to discover the strength of that individual. So get that opportunity to have a conversation. And during that period of time having conversation, you're identifying strengths that are obvious. So you may see things like, or look for things like, are they good at outlining a problem? Are they good at solving problems? Are they good with decision making? What about leadership skills? So you can see different strengths in that individual who may for you be a troublemaker in your mind because it seems as if they're pulling your team on the opposite direction. However, it doesn't mean that there are not certain strengths that can be channeled in the proper way. So what you're doing, you're discovering these strengths. The next thing to do is to validate the strength that you see. Be genuine about it. If these are strengths, validate. You could say, I really love the way you outline problems and you're really good at coming up with solutions. So validate that. And what validation does, it actually reinforces competence. So competence is so important to people in general. Competence based on research is one of the internal drives for people. People want to feel as if they know what they're doing. And you might be saying, who cares? That's not my responsibility. However, it's important as a leader to try to enhance certain positive skills in your team. I know just human drive, as I say, if someone do a presentation or you do something, you tend to want to ask, how did I do? So that's kind of a natural thing. People want to know that whatever they're doing, they're competent at what they're doing. So with you highlighting the competence in your team, it builds this thing we call congruence. So we're moving from competence to congruence. Congruence is this alignment with who you really are and who you think you are. So most people have this idea of who they are, but many times there's not an alignment with who they really want to be and who they actually are. And when that's not aligned, there's a lot of friction and confusion. And sometimes you really want to be that person. And especially if in a situation where you may find someone that's actually having a group that's going in a different direction than where you're going, they may be looking for some kind of validation as a leader. They may be looking for something as maybe I need to be validated as a good decision maker, whatever it is. But once that is validated and they feel as if who they actually are and who they think they are is the same, then there's usually some form of harmony and less friction and less reason to want to prove themselves. So that's what congruence is. That's alignment with who you are and who you think you are, if that's validated. And so when you have congruence, it builds confidence. Knowing their competence, then you'll be building the confidence that they have. And with that confidence, there's less need to want to prove themselves. So if you are there to build confidence within themselves, then you'll be doing great as a leader. And I know a lot of people may be saying, but that's not my job to fix anybody. But as a leader, you're bringing the best out in your team. And if you remember, there have been just so many stories. I've listened to different stories. Maybe you have had that story where when you think about the person that had the most influence on your life in a positive way are usually people who told you that you were good at something, who validated the things that who told you could do it. And so, yes, it's important for every aspect of your leadership journey to make sure that you're building the positive influence that you should have on your team in order to get them to move in the direction that you want them to go. So influence is basically leading. And so when you have that influence on your team, including that informal leader that's ready to actually split your team, that would be a big win. Helping them with confidence, help them to build trust. Help them to trust you, help them to feel safe with you. And that safety help them to feel comfortable with following your lead. So that influence came about based on trust. Because that person was able to trust you and felt safe, you had the influence that you needed to have with your team. So now you can move your team in the direction in which you want your team to go. So that also helps with positive engagement, positive work culture, and more productivity. But yes, this seems simple in words, but when you think about it, it's not really easy and it needs investment. So it needs investment of your time to sit and talk to your team to get to know them. And you're not only trying to build influence for that one person, but you're building influence for any member of your team by identifying their strengths, by validating them, by helping them to see how competent they are in different areas, building congruence, and then building confidence. And with building confidence, now you're creating that trust, that safety, and now you have the influence that you should have with your team. But as I said, it's going to take the investment of time. It's going to take it's not going to happen overnight, but is it worth it? Is it worth having harmony in your team? Is it worth having people moving towards the same goal, working together, increasing productivity, increasing your engagement? I think it's worth it. So the first thing I'd ask you to do is identify that person that you think is pulling your team apart or pulling your team in the wrong direction and start having that conversation. Until we talk again, Subscribe and you'll be hearing more leadership tips. Thank you. Have a great day.
Talk to God about you, and I ain't even met you yet. Everybody's waiting on you.